Hello and welcome back to my favorite people. Hope you're doing well. I'm incredibly excited for today's video because I've been seeing this Bitcoin bullish July narrative being spread all over the place, and I'm sure you have as well. YouTube videos, news articles, Twitter posts, all talking about how Bitcoin has had a median return of almost 10% in July historically, and how it tends to bounce back strongly in this month. And of course, they'll usually include a Bitcoin monthly returns chart like this one, showing a pattern of how each and every red June for Bitcoin historically, just like the one we saw last month, is always followed by a green July. And although on the surface all of this is factually true, it leaves out a way more important point, which is the fact that after July, we have August and September, the two worst months for Bitcoin historically, with a median return of a negative 7.5% and negative 5.5%, which of course, once you add them up, completely undoes the July rally. But these articles and this narrative spread this idea and this FOMO that July is going to be bullish. The odds are in our favor. This is going to be the start of the next leg up, because the majority of crypto investors don't buy July 1st and sell July 31st, especially if markets were to rally during the month. Everybody would be targeting way higher prices. Everybody would be thinking this is the start of the next major move. And this is why I have been spending so much time covering the summer chop we've seen for Bitcoin historically outside of the mania years like 2021 and 2017, because the majority of investors get roped in on the July rally like we saw in 2015, 2016, 2018, 19, 20, 2022, and even 2023. You see a July rally and then a full retrace going into August and September before the real move happens, usually in October. And in previous cycles, I felt a lot of FOMO and made a lot of mistakes because of narratives like this one, where they say, oh, this month is usually bullish, this month is usually bearish, but it completely leaves out what happens in the months leading up to that month and what's going to happen in the 60 days after July is over. So that's why I've been covering this Bitcoin summer chop pattern so much. And that's why these Bitcoin monthly returns charts can be very misleading, because they tend to leave out the big picture. And to make matters worse, it's great that Bitcoin had a 9.6% median return historically in July, but we're facing some very interesting supply dynamics. To be honest, up to this point, I thought the Mt. Gox repayments in July thing was just going to be FUD once again, because every single year that I've been involved in this market, we've seen FUD and articles about Mt. Gox come out, but this time does seem to actually be serious, because we saw $9 billion worth of Bitcoin, almost 140,000 BTC, that hasn't moved in over 7 years, move in the past 2 to 3 weeks. And that's just on-chain proof that this Mt. Gox Bitcoin, the 140,000, is likely going to be sent back to investors. Does this mean it's all over? Does this mean it's going to kill Bitcoin? We're never going to have a rally again? No, but this is a lot of sell pressure that could come up in the short term. I'm sure these people aren't going to sell everything, but they're likely going to take some profits, especially after being forced to hodl for almost 10 years. And this on-chain transaction of $9 billion is proof that these Mt. Gox repayments might actually be happening this time around, and it isn't just FUD. And of course, we still have the German government coming out and selling once again. As of 4 hours ago, we talked about them starting to send some Bitcoin to exchanges last week, and it looks like this is a trend that is maintaining. So they're just going to slowly be offloading this Bitcoin, which will continue to put a ceiling on price in the short term. And of course, the US government had to get involved as well. They've continued sending crypto to exchanges also. So we have perhaps some Mt. Gox supply coming soon, and we have these governments slowly offloading some of the crypto they've seized. And again, this does put a lid on price in the short term, and it aligns very nicely with our expectation for a prolonged reaccumulation and chop phase as we grind through all of this supply before the next move higher. And that's why during these periods, I like to spend a lot of time tweeting about the long-term bullish picture, because it can be very easy to sell everything or make these emotional decisions based on short-term concerns like government selling pressure or Mt. Gox supply But in the long term, the reason why we're in Bitcoin to begin with is because of currency devaluation and governments not being responsible with spending and national debt, which of course is why we Bitcoin to begin with. And that's still the thesis in the long term. And I do think these supply issues will pass and the long-term vision will still continue to play out because of currency devaluation. We're also seeing a lot of positive regulation. For example, the US Marshal Service is going to be using Coinbase Prime to custody and trade crypto, which is ironic because the SEC is currently in a lawsuit with Coinbase, but the US government is using Coinbase to sell Bitcoin and Ethereum, and the Marshal Service just signed a contract with Coinbase. So quite a bit of a mess there, but regulatory concerns has been one of the largest headwinds for this market for a long time, and seeing that slowly get resolved is great to see. Similar thing with stablecoins, as Circle has become the first global stablecoin issuer to become compliant with the new EU laws. Just more and more evidence that as we get regulatory clarity, the chances of crypto or Bitcoin being banned or fought against by regulators is not likely going to happen anytime soon, and removes a lot of that long-term risk and concerns that institutions and retail participants alike have had that maybe the government would ban crypto one day, which would obviously heavily impact adoption. So although we have a lot of headwinds in the short term, I'm still very bullish on the long term. And yes, we did see an open and close below the 20-week moving average last week. So it just further confirms that we're likely going to have more chop and consolidation over the next few weeks, especially as long as the dollar index continues to go sideways here, threatening its next move higher, because we know Bitcoin requires huge devaluation in the dollar for its mania phases, which of course we said were 2021 and 2017, where we see bullish price action throughout the year and even through the summers, something that we are not seeing today. So we really want to see that dollar index devaluation if Bitcoin is going to have its mania phase. And of course, Bitcoin mania phases lead to alt seasons, something that everybody is direly waiting for, but does not look like it's likely going to occur in the short term, as long as the dollar index looks this strong and as long as Bitcoin and Ethereum are facing this type of supply pressure in the short term. As for macro, we have a huge unemployment rate print coming up this Friday. I think the expectation is 4%, which is what we also received last month. And with inflation slowly working its way down, all eyes will be on the labor market data. That's going to have the largest impact on when we're going to see Fed easing and when we're going to see rate cuts. But for now, we're going to have to wait and see what that Friday data print is before jumping to any conclusions. As for the S&P 500, doing what it normally does, just grinding higher and climbing the wall of worry, since it is a lot less sensitive to monetary policy and the dollar index than Bitcoin is. And that's probably why we're seeing this divergence, where the S&P 500 just continues grinding higher while Bitcoin goes down and chops sideways and struggles to put in new yearly highs. As for Ethereum, not looking too bad, still holding that 20-week moving average, still holding the mid-level of the rally we saw on the ETF approval rumors. And as long as we're putting in higher lows, hard to be bearish or very bearish in the short to medium term. Of course, all eyes are going to be on the ETF launch. I believe it's still expected to be mid to late July. So still a ways away and probably still a lot more sideways until that happens. But as of right now, until we get that close below the 20-week moving average, like what we saw with Bitcoin, hard for me to be too bearish Ethereum in the short term. Similar thing for Solana, really nice reclaim of this 138 level we talked about, closed back below it after trading below there. Bullish reclaims is one of my favorite patterns to trade, but because Bitcoin is below its 20-week moving average, I have a hard time being that excited about Solana's price action, because we know that Solana is likely not going to do anything incredible unless we see bullishness from Bitcoin as well. So for now, we'll see how Solana reacts to its 20-week moving average. Is it going to be a retest of this trend line? Wow, what a perfectly straight line. Is it going to be a retest of this trend line and a rollover, or can Solana grind higher? A lot of that is going to depend on Bitcoin, but I don't have my hopes that high as of right now. So for now, my portfolio and strategy remain unchanged as long as we're chopping around like we do each and every summer outside of these mania years. No reason to do anything crazy or make any big changes. If we see Bitcoin enter price discovery above 75K, I'll consider going out on the risk curve with some of my portfolio. But for the meantime, I just plan to kind of sit on my hands and just wait out this summer chop to see what the market wants to do. Yes, Bitcoin could still trade around the lower 50,000s, but I don't think we go much lower than that. I still think Bitcoin is in the fair value region, almost right in the center of it, still funny enough. And I know this is subjective. This is just my opinion on what I think is fair value, overvalued, or undervalued. I know everybody is going to have their own view on this chart. But of course, in the long term, I'm still very bullish Bitcoin because I'm still expecting way more currency devaluation and non-responsible spending by governments, just like I'm bullish the S&P 500 in the long term as well. But anyway, let me know what you expect. Do you think July is going to be the start of the next major rally? Or will it just get fully retraced in August and September, like we've seen in almost every year outside of those mania bull market years? Would love to know what you guys expect. Thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.